Welcome, everybody, to today's Instagram Live. We're doing these lives every Tuesday in September. We're doing them as a combination of a transmission where I'm sharing topics that I feel like are most relevant to my community right now, and also as a Q&A. So I have some questions that have been submitted, and we're going to get right into it. Today's theme, we're going to talk a little bit about the eclipse energy as a continuation of last week, and then we're going to get into the main topic, which is spiritual entrepreneurship and the delightful, intense, unique experience of having entrepreneurship be part of your soul's calling in this lifetime. Those of you who are live, you are welcome to ask questions as we go, and let's get into it. So it's eclipse season right now. The way that I think about astrology is very much, it's not deterministic in the sense that the planets are controlling us, but it is that we're in a reality that has essentially this cosmic clock that mirrors thematically what we are moving through. And every 6 months we have this opportunity where essentially the divine hand comes in with an assist. And eclipse seasons are typically times where people experience, not everybody experiences a big shakeup every eclipse season. It really depends on other placements and where it is in your chart and all of that. But it's specifically a time where if there's essentially a divine appointment that you are meant to keep, things that are meant to happen in your life, things that you have been working on, let's say you've been really intending and creating and putting energy towards something that is for your highest good, this is often a time where all of a sudden a bunch of things will occur to kind of speed that up or to course correct you. This is especially a time where anything that has that sort of vestige of the old, anything that's based in fear, that's based in conditioning, that you are ready to let go of, to detoxify out of your life, it's going to come up and be let go. Sometimes that letting go process is very graceful, especially if you are getting ahead of these things by being in an ongoing daily process of clearing and contemplation. And also these processes of letting go can start with something getting kicked up, right? Someone submitted a question basically saying, I feel like my divine assignment is to let go of everything that has already happened, right? Everything that has essentially been my life up until this point. And this is very common during these times, not just eclipse seasons, but where we are. This is, and specifically where we are in the next 6 months or so. This is something I went into a lot greater detail on in my energy updated mission space on Friday, but I'll give you all the cliff notes here. So, Saturn just went retrograde into Pisces, or it's been retrograde, but it just went back into Pisces, and Neptune's going to go back into Pisces in about 2 months. And when we make our way into February of 2026, that is when Saturn and Neptune are going to meet at 0 degrees Aries. And from an astrological perspective, this is a major nexus point, a major indicator of where we are in our evolutionary journey, such that a real expression of the new is beginning. There's this journey that we know that we're on right now between old and new, between the world based in fear, conditioning, homogenization, be like this or else, very limited capacity to really express yourself, to live a life that was not super constrained by all of this different conditioning and circumstantial limitation. We've been dismantling that. We can see many different catalytic moments that have supported that. And at this point, especially if you're someone tuning into this, it is optional in a certain sense, but on another level, your soul has already made the choice whether you are going to be a part of this process and whether this is a lifetime where you're going all the way in terms of your evolution, in terms of truly being the one that breaks the curses, that breaks the cycles, that ends the old and begins the new. And this is a very unique position to be in. I refer to it, and others refer to it, as being a bridge builder, where you started your life in very dense circumstances, in conditioning, in fear, in lack, in major trauma, super dark experiences. and yet you are still here, and you have been on a healing journey for some amount of time. And in your lifetime, you have the opportunity to experience a life that almost feels like a completely different timeline, completely different dimension, completely different life, as if you have almost been reincarnated in this life, which is also what happens for people as they're going through certain catalytic awakening experiences. So in this journey between old and new, there's going to be a lot more energy available for us to be creating in a new way, to be making our visions real, to be going from just pointing the finger and saying, all of this is wrong with the world and I'd do it better if I had power, to reclaiming our power to do it better, to create something new. And so that's coming, and you're likely feeling it in certain ways. You can likely compare, where was I 5 years ago, or where was I 12 years ago, and how are things different now? How am I in greater alignment? How am I less reactive? How am I more in touch with my gifts, my soul, my power? How am I experiencing my earthly life in a more integrated spiritual way, where yes, there's the physical reality, but there's also the unseen, there's the energetics, and both of those are getting integrated more. So we can already see that shift, and this next 6-month period is really about cleaning up. It's about what parts of you are still spiritually immature, are still not walking the talk, are still in lack and fear and limitation. And this is not about being, and who are literally still feel like you cannot leave the old circumstances. And all of this, as I'm speaking about it, it's literal, physical in your life. And whatever's coming to mind is what it is for you. You'll know. But it's also energetic, right? It's not just I'm staying in this bad job. It's energetically, what do I have to believe about myself to think that this job is the only thing that I can do? That's what we're getting to. So this is a time where, it's not about beating ourselves up and saying, oh, I still believe, I'm still scared. Why are you scared? Because you were pretty intensely conditioned into a world of fear and scarcity and control, and you have memories from this life and ancestrally, right, epigenetically, that make you feel like you're going to die if you make a new choice, that make you feel like you can't be authentic, like you can't go for it, like there's going to be some negative consequence. And so this cleaning up process that we're in, we have to do it with a lot of compassion, because I was saying this in Mission Space on Friday, it's essentially this rescue mission for aspects of yourself that haven't crossed the bridge yet, that aren't in the new, that aren't coherent with that new timeline. And welcome to everybody who's joining live. It's good to see you. You're welcome to ask questions as I go. So this is essentially a rescue mission for younger aspects of yourself, for more fearful aspects of yourself. So the name of the game right now is to be so clear. Do whatever you can, whatever reminders you have to put up in your reality, that this is not a time to regress into despair. It is anything that's coming up that seems negative right now, that especially invites you to kind of tell an old story. Oh, I guess it is impossible for me. It's not really going to work out. All of that is what's getting cleared up. That's not really the most coherent, integrated, higher self you. That is the voice of a version of you that still hasn't been brought current and present with the rest of reality. And for those of you who have an understanding of how to do this kind of timeline work and integration work, you already know what to do. For those of you that are resonating with this but don't actually know how to do this work, this is one of those things that I teach within Mission Space, which is my membership. Anything I reference in these lives, you can always just go to the link in my bio and you'll see more information about it. So this is multi-dimensional energetic work that we get to do to bring aspects of ourselves into coherence. Because, when I look at the questions that have been submitted in the last week, so much of it is speaking to this push-pull. People saying, I feel like I'm 1 foot in the old, 1 foot in the new. people saying, like, I know what I'm here to do. I'm clear on my gifts, I'm clear on my mission, but I'm not doing it. Or I take a step forward and then I get pulled back. That is because your higher self, your most lucid, conscious adult self in this moment is like, let's go. Now is the time. I'm ready to go. I've got clarity on my next steps. I'm ready to move forward. And then there's a version of you, and perhaps multiple versions of you along different points in the timeline, that are like, heck no. Let's crank the brakes. Let's throw up an obstacle. Let's create some chaos. Let's create some crisis. Let's get paralyzed in fear and doubt. Right? Someone said, what did she say? Every time I get close, I panic and I want to run. Yeah. A part of you is panicking because it believes that it's literally going to die if it shows up and it shines. It believes that it's going to outshine its family and it's not going to be okay. It believes that it's going to be persecuted for speaking about whatever it's going to speak about. It believes that people like us don't do things like that. It believes you can't make money being yourself. Right? So there's this integration process that is very much the assignment right now. And it's helpful to look at, what has come up. And this is what we've been tracking this in Mission Space the last few months, the signs of the new, right? What has come in the last few months, specifically June, July, August, that felt new, that felt inspiring, that felt kind of like this inspiration, this indication of, wow, that would be really cool if I could do that. And especially if it came in and it gave you energy, but then doubt and fear came in, these are signs of the new, right? You're already getting the inspiration. And especially if you're tuning into this, I find, I have a whole program called Clarify Your Calling, which is also in Mission Space. And it's really powerful, and people have amazing experiences with it, whether they're first stepping onto their path of purpose or they're contemplating what project they're going to do next. And even though I have that program and it really helps people, I often find that the issue of clarity is not even really what it usually is. It's usually this more this integrating the subconscious piece, where you actually on some level already know what your calling is, but a part of you doesn't believe it's possible, is scared to move forward, and so it's showing up as a loop of lack of clarity. And this is a little spoiler alert if you ever do the program, that we do get into your gifts and collecting data on what the true calling is next, but a big part of it is what part of you doesn't want to know. What part of you is intentionally trying to keep you safe by saying, I don't know enough yet to move forward. And thank you for this share here. Totally want to create a new business, but then I get pulled back with fears. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. It is for those who want true liberation. And that bridges into what we're going to talk about today, which is the spiritual calling of entrepreneurship. I have a free masterclass that I'm doing on Monday, September 22nd. You can find that at the link in my bio. If you comment masterclass, my automation, which is what I colloquially call it, my internet elves, but my automation will send you the link as well. We're going to go way deeper into that, but I wanted to start the conversation here and talk about, it's one thing to say, I want financial freedom. I want to run my own business. There's lots of people who have a calling to entrepreneurship, or who that is a viable path for them. Who I'm talking to, who it is my divine assignment to assist right now, are the people for whom entrepreneurship is essentially the only path forward for their soul, for a variety of reasons that I'm going to talk about right now, because it's a very specific experience where, again, you do have a choice, but if you've already been choosing into your highest timeline, your path of purpose, and this is glitching you out, where you're actually being called to entrepreneurship, but you are blocking or not answering that call, then it's going to stall your life out. And the beauty that is on the other side of that is you actually in your highest expression, you abundantly resourced, you sharing your gifts and your soul breathing a sigh of relief because you have actually done what you came here to do. So we're going to get into that in a minute. I just want to see any other comments here. Yeah, I'm so glad this is resonating. Yeah, and for I know a lot of people who are caring for their parents right now in different experiences of illness and transition, and that's very emblematic of the times that we're in, right? Tending to the end of a chapter. Who are you on the other side of that, right? And almost sort of holding vigil for the graceful and honorable end of chapters of life, and then the energy is transmuted, it is transformed, and we get to move forward. And on a very practical level, for those of you who have big obligations right now that you feel like are preventing you from moving forward. I was just talking to a client yesterday who's like, has a lot going on with her family. She's got young kids with very specific needs and different family dynamics. And she was saying, it's really hard to move forward on my business. And I honored the part of her that felt that way. And I also pushed back and said, it is possible for you to do both of these things, right? You don't need 12 hours a day to run your business. You need little pockets of time where you're intentionally focused. And it is possible to do it all, not in that kind of like, hyped up, you can have it all way, but you can have everything that your soul wants to experience in this life, 100%, right? That's written for you. You just need to claim it. But for those of you who feel like a heavy obligation from old commitments and you feel like you don't have a lot of time for the new, I would challenge you to say, where do I have time? What would I need to change about my life in order to no longer tell the story that I don't have time for my calling? Right? And obviously for some of you, there's a deep surrendering into like, I can't think about what's next because I just have to be in what is. But for those of you who can feel the part of you, that's again, just an aspect, but it's one part of the larger pie that's saying, it's pretty convenient that this is so overwhelming right now because it's giving me an excuse to delay. I would say, can you literally take 3 minutes a day to work on your new project, to spend time meditating or walking and seeing yourself as the version of you that you're going to be in a year or in 2 years, and make the barrier really low. This is something I teach in all my programs. And it's essentially making the barrier for what allows you to check off the box really small so that you can create continuity. So can you make it, I spent 3 minutes today working on my calling. I spent 5 minutes today working on my calling. Even if it's 1 a.m. and you're about to go to sleep and you've had a super hard day, you can take 5 extra minutes and journal about your project or do some task that moves it forward. So that's also a sneaky way that we create resistance, or we create this, or the parts of us that are resisting create a block to us moving forward, is they make the task seem too big. Oh, I can't possibly like start a whole thing right now. No, of course. Did I start the whole thing that I'm doing right now in one day? No. Many, 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 many small actions. And sometimes the action is 1 step forward in the 3D, and then, 5 minutes of third dimensional action, and then an hour of subconscious reprogramming, nervous system expansion, doing the inner work so that you can actually continue to move forward in the outer. So bite size it. And when you start to do that, you gradually retell or recreate the story. And I'm so glad this is resonating. If you do that for 2 weeks, it's going to be a lot harder for you to say, I'm not moving forward, or I don't have time. So the invitation is make it bite-sized and make a commitment. Make a commitment to, and the other way to do it is you can make a long list of like, here's all the things I'll eventually need to do for this project, including like, expand my nervous system's capacity to not feel like I'm dying when I'm sharing my message, including, start writing, including, get this website, whatever it is. Obviously, everyone's projects are different, including get some paint for my paintings. Right? Set up the canvas, pick the corner in my house where I'm going to do my painting. Make a really long list so that you also never have the excuse of, I don't know what to do next. And make the tasks as small as possible, right? So you can just keep moving forward. And then when you have the energy, you're going to knock out a whole bunch of them. Let me see this. I feel like I've just been keeping my business alive for 15 years just for this time to create what is coming. Still haven't figured out exactly what the universe wants me to create. Yeah, so this is something we'll get into more in the masterclass on September 22nd. It's a masterclass specifically on creating a thriving business based on your gifts during this time of great change. We're going to get into the specifics of how do I know what form the business is meant to take? What is my offer really? And in my experience, there's always something that we can do right now that is alive, that is vital. And then as we do it, more is revealed, right? What I'm teaching now, I can see continuity from 5-10 years ago, 100%, even 20 years ago, 100%. And also it has been created through iteration, right? Where, okay, I followed the call, I taught that, I followed the call, I created that. And then through that, it has made it more obvious. And this gets into this conversation of when entrepreneurship is part of your soul's calling, the number one reason why you would be called to have a business, to be, even if, and this is not just solopreneur, you might have team, you might have collaborators, but to not just work within someone else's structure, the number one reason is that you have unique gifts that the world needs and that your soul came here excited to share. And essentially all other paths will be blocked, including through a safe, someone else's dream, but not totally my dream level business that to someone else, it's like, oh, I'm teaching meditation or I'm doing, somewhat spiritual or creative work, but you on a soul level have more to give. It's going to stall out. You're not going to have that full feeling of fulfillment of I've had the impact, which is always correlated with income as well, that I've had this success that I want, because your soul is basically like, we have a path to success that is through the highest level cultivation, maturation, and amplification of these specific gifts. If this does not resonate with you, please crumple it up and throw it in the trash and keep it moving. And blessings for your path, because I'm not speaking this over anyone and saying this is what you have to do. I'm speaking to the people whose souls essentially agreed that this is what they were going to do, and so you need to figure it out. So part of why people with a specific mission are called to entrepreneurship is that it is the way to give the highest expression of those gifts. And sometimes it's hiding in plain sight. And this is what I work with my clients on in, one-on-one, different programs. We'll talk about it in the masterclass, is essentially what is that thing that from a soul level perspective is so obvious. Whoa, this is the story that I'm here to share. These are the tools that I'm here to share, and I didn't even realize it. Again, because there's these stories overlaid of no one's going to pay for this, etc. I'm crazy. I'm going to get taken out if I do this, all of that, right? So much of this is this subconscious game of getting your whole human self on board with the soul plan. So let me see this question. Can you help with the knowing of that you're supposed to play bigger, but the fear of feeling seen and judged? Yeah, 100%. This is what we work on in all of my containers, because it's less that you don't know what to say, and it's more that you're scared of what's going to happen when you say it. And how do we reprogram that? Reprogramming is essentially creating a new set point where the story right now is I'm going to die if I share. And right now, I'm chilling on Instagram Live. 8 years ago, coming on Instagram Live, I would be so anxious. And then after this, I would essentially have to go through hours of reprogramming work to create a feeling of safety in my body, because there would be parts of me that were, and again, it's not conscious. I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to get taken out for sharing this, but a part of me felt that way, right? So I had to connect with that part, and I had to create a new story. On a somatic level, meaning on a body level, it is simply about creating safety in the body when doing something scary. So yes, you do push through on a certain level, but you also don't just gun it all the way through. You do certain things, Qigong, I mean, there's a million practices, bilateral stimulation, tapping. You do things so that you actually feel as physiologically calm as possible while you are doing a new thing. And when you over rev, it's kind of like a car that's over revving, or building your strength in the gym, where it's like you push to your limit, or you max out, and then you kind of give yourself some time to recover, and then you come back. That's what you do. This is on the specifically on the visibility piece. I have a training in Mission Space called Voice and Visibility that goes all the way into this, and this is also something that we get into in God is My Boss, which is my program on spiritual business and essentially running a business based on your gifts, because it's so important. Because again, is it that we don't know what to do in our businesses, or is it that there's a part of us that's absolutely terrified? And this is so the connection between the external results and the subconscious it is so obvious to me that it's when people come to me and they say, well, how do I grow my audience? It's like, that's not the question. The question is, what part of you is happy that your audience is not growing? What part of you is freaking thrilled that you are still able to hide and that you're at best like a well-kept secret, right? And yeah, maybe you have more followers than you did, and you have some level of a business, but it's not super expanded. It's not as expanded as it could be. Right? I'm in my own process around this, continuing to create coherence, safety, and to feel ready for next levels of expansion in my work. So the question is not, how do I have more clients? How do I have more followers? It's what part of me doesn't want that and is thrilled that I'm at this level? And how do I help that part have a new experience? How do I create a feeling where it is actually safe to expand, where good things happen through more visibility, and also when it's not just like la 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 la, this feeling of like only good things will happen to me if I'm seen. Sure, there's a level where you can filter out certain negative experiences from your reality. I've had multiple times where different internet mobs have included me in call-outs, and I haven't even known that it happened because I was just not available for that derailing my day. I had other things going on, right? And it was like in my stories and I didn't even notice it. You can have that experience, and it's also accepting that greater visibility comes with people not liking you, right? It comes with you find your people, your soul fractal, to use a Gene Keys term. You find your real people, but then as you do that, you polarize out the people who are not your people. So it's not just like I'm going to convince myself that everything's going to be okay and nothing that I currently think would be negative will occur. No one will criticize me. It's more like when people do criticize me, I'll be okay, right? It's not a life or death thing. I'm safe. I'm so glad that this is resonating. And I know that this is really for the people who are tuning in on this, because I wasn't actually planning to talk today about the fear of visibility, but it's what started to come through because it is so fundamental and it can be so sneaky. So for those of you, I really want to help you like land this. If you've been in a story of, I don't know what to offer in my business, or why aren't things growing? I'm trying so hard. Really sit with, is this actually a strategy or offer issue, or is there a part of you that is thrilled that you're not moving forward because it's safer to be where you are, even though it's stagnant and it's not really where your soul wants to be going? And this is also why I talk about your mission being your life. Like, this is part of your mission and part of your work as a bridge builder, as someone who is here to heal the world from the inside out through your own experience. Like, this cleanup work is so honorable. It is so important. You're not bad for having these issues. Like, it's part of what you came here to resolve. So embrace it and get excited, because when you start to create this coherence within yourself where you actually feel safe to move forward, that's when I see it all the time. Clients will clear something and then it's like, oh, out of nowhere, 3 new people reached out about my work, or like a post from 2 years ago went viral, or it's like you have removed the energetic limits that you have been placing through your own free will, however unconsciously, on your expansion. And then it's like your cork that kind of pops back up to the level that is more natural for you. And then you keep going from there. So the path of spiritual entrepreneurship, part of why people are called to it is because there are gifts that can only be given when you take full responsibility for giving them. So ways to know that entrepreneurship may be part of your path, because it's not everybody's path. One is that there isn't a full context. You have some connection to your gifts, to your story, things that you've been through that you know would be supportive to other people, and you feel like you are playing very small in your current arena. This was me before I got booted out of every job that I was trying to hide within years ago. Right, I reached a level where I was actually doing, a lot of my work was very on purpose, right? I did activism work, I did youth leadership development, I did, even when I was a New York City tour guide, I was like telling stories of marginalized people in New York City and the history of immigration, and there was always this kind of give back or this connection to justice and liberation that was part of my work. But when I look back, I actually was playing very, 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 very small, because I was sort of this Trojan horse where I would come into certain contexts and I would share an aspect of my gifts, but I wasn't sharing all of it. I wasn't able to talk about all of the energetics and the subconscious stuff that I talk about. I wasn't able to talk about God and connection to this sort of higher plan for life. I wasn't really talking about the soul. There were many things that I wasn't able to fully express, and I also was under the energetic authority of my bosses who had certain agendas and were not allowing me to talk about certain things, right? And if I had on my own terms been able to show up fully, I would have been doing it very differently. And a lot of people who, when it's your soul calling to be an entrepreneur and to essentially create a vehicle where you fully stand behind your gifts, you learn how to put them out into the world, you make them accessible to people, and you allow value exchange to occur. Part of why that calling exists is because there isn't currently the proper vehicle for your gifts to be given. So this can look like feeling like you're professionally behind people, feeling like you always have bad bosses, feeling like, no one understands you, feeling like you're not very good at your actual job, because it's essentially like a horse trying to run at like 1 mile an hour instead of just freaking going for it. Right? So it can look like you kind of have almost an arrested development thing, or you never really fit in a professional context, because it's not the context. It's set up so that you will never have the feeling of true fulfillment that you're here to have in that arena, because eventually you are meant to realize that you're meant for more and to go for it, and to see that you have to become your own boss. God is your boss. That's why my program's called that. you work for the divine, you work for your soul, you work for humanity, and you are taking responsibility for being all the things that, and this is not true for everybody, but it's true for some, being all the things that you can point your finger and say, my boss isn't that, my organization isn't that, this company isn't that, I don't see this. And that is one stage of the spiritual entrepreneur, is essentially just seeing everything that's wrong. And believe me, I had hyperbolically toxic bosses, right? I had very negative situations, but I blessed them all, because if any of those jobs had been good, I would still be there. If I had been able to fully be myself in that context, I would still be there. I wouldn't have gone through what I went through to actually bring forward what I'm here to create. And I've created so much in the last, let's say, 8 years. And in some ways, I'm just beginning, right? There's so much more that's going to come forward, so many more expressions of what I'm here to share. So my intention in what I'm sharing right now is for those of you who this is part of your divine assignment, for you to have some new perspectives, to see whatever you've been going through in a new way. Wait, maybe I have all these toxic bosses and I can't hold a job because I'm meant to be my own boss. Maybe I feel like no one understands me in my current environment, or like I'm professionally behind my friends because I've been running the wrong race because I'm here to do something different. I'm going to share a few more perspectives on entrepreneurship as a spiritual calling. A big point I want to make is that it forces you to take full responsibility, right? It forces you to stop putting your power outside there and saying, no one will hire me for what I'm good at, and say, I'm going to hire me. And the world wants to hire me. And, no one understands, I can't possibly be this, this, and this, right? I've got this identity, I've got this story, I've got this perspective. There's no context for that. Okay, well, you're here to create the context. And it's as hard as it's going to be, and it will be challenging. It will push you. As hard as it's going to be, it is going to be growth that is fruitful and is satisfying to your soul, where your soul's like, whoa, I have to overcome my fear of being seen. Whoa, I have to thread the needle here where I'm not going to be like all these bad business people, or, false conscious entrepreneurs, or anything that you point your finger at and say, this is wrong. Okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to not do that, but also not let my justifiable resistance to what I've been shown business is keep me from creating a very ethical, clear, solid structure for my gifts to reach people, and taking responsibility for that. Right? It's a huge responsibility initiation. Another sign that this is part of your path is that you have a really big vision. And I find that a lot of people who are meant to be spiritual entrepreneurs will say things like, well, if I just had $10 million, then I would just do this. Or if God would just send me a funder or whatever, then I could finally start doing things. And sure, that's totally possible. And I know people that that's happened for. But the real question to ask is, if that were to happen, would you fully cultivate and express your gifts? For some people, it's yes. It's like, oh my God, the funder is here. We finally have to do it. For certain projects, maybe a retreat center, things like that. For other people, any amount of premature divine intervention and assistance doesn't create enough tension for you to keep growing. It doesn't create enough. And I'm not saying you have to suffer. It can be very, there is a lot of blessing and a lot of ease within it. But I'm really getting at, if your soul said I didn't go through all that stuff to not have something to show for it, to not turn those lessons into a crystallized form that other people can benefit from, then your circumstances are going to continue to kind of push you onto that path, to push you into the highest expression. And when you try to do safe things, which is even, in a business context, take a safe client, right? Do a watered down version of your message, or work for someone else, take a little detour. Those things will not work out because you're here to do the thing that you're here to do. And this is a big point for people to understand, is that the safe option in the matrix, in the, even, matrix or not, right? Just the safe option, the thing that seems like, oh, that's more logical. That's a good idea, right? That I can see how that could or should work. That will actually, for people who their calling, part of their soul's calling is entrepreneurship, is to create a business based on their gifts, that safe option is actually less safe. And the thing that seems the most scary, the thing that seems the most like that doesn't work out for people, or that seems completely crazy, I don't have any examples of how that would work, I've never done this before, that is where you have people go in Quantum Leap and have this experience of overnight, seemingly 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, right? All of a sudden, oh my God, they're a completely different person. Oh my God, their business is astronomically successful or exponentially more successful than the statistics say that it should be. That's what happens when you get into alignment with your actual soul path. That is where you activate this higher level of synchronicity and this higher level of flow in your life. And it is through doing the scary thing. And what we'll get into is doing the scary thing is also not just some like ungrounded mystical leap of, I'm going to put one thing up on a literal or digital bulletin board and then God's going to bless me with everything. No, part of it is learning how to speak to your people, learning what your real divine assignment is, what your offers are, and how to tell that story. This is something that I teach. We'll get into it in the masterclass, and I have other resources on as well. So it's essentially about fully accepting. When you realize that this is your calling, you fully accept that there is a bunch of work that you're going to need to do, but you get excited about it because you realize that if you actually full send it, you go all the way on this path, you will receive all the things that you've been trying to receive in these other places. So we're going to begin to wrap this up now. If you have, those of you who are live, if you have questions about this, you're welcome to ask them. I'm just going to see if there's anything else I want to share here. Yeah, I'd say another big sign that this is part of your calling is that you are on the sidelines on some level. You might already have some type of business, but if it's not at the full expression of what you're here to share, or if you're totally on the sidelines, you'll have a very keen eye for the things that other people are doing wrong. You will have a keen eye for, well, if I were to tell that story, I would tell it differently. Or, why does this program not have, this in it? Or whatever. It's like you're able to see, oh, that conscious business is doing it this way, and I think that that's wrong. I would do it this way. Okay. All of that is, well, then you need to do it. Right? So that can also be a sign, is that you're very good at seeing what could be done differently. Part of your initiation is to get into the arena and do it differently. Great question. What is an example of how you help someone figure out their offer and what they've gone on to do and create monetarily? Yeah, let me feel into what example I want to share here. So many different examples I have, and I'm just going to kind of riff here, and this will also be something we'll talk more about in the master classes, more specific examples. I have a client who, let me let the right example come through. I have a client who went through really big grief experience in her life, and she was already kind of doing some level of mentorship, and she felt called to be a guide. She went through a really big grief experience and then realized that, oh, this is one of the greatest wounds of my life is meant to become the thing that I am here to help people with. And so I'm going to bring forward, not just a want to improve your life general mentorship thing, but I'm going to create a space, and she created a beautiful membership that's continuing to grow and do beautiful things. That is a space for people who are navigating the experience of grief, right? And they do these grief processes and move it through their body, and it's an incredibly supportive community, right? And so that's one example. Another example that's coming to mind is I have another client who also just recently created a membership. She, without giving too many details, because I want to protect people's, it's important to me to have confidentiality unless someone has said, like, please share my story. And actually, I will say that who asked this question, part of what I'm going to be doing in my live series, because we're doing these lives every Tuesday this month, is the next few lives I'm going to come on here with someone who is either a client or a colleague, a friend, who has a successful business based on their spiritual and creative gifts. And we're going to talk about their story. We're going to hear, not just from me and my perspective, but what made the biggest difference for them, what their offers look like, and what that journey of growth has looked like. So I will riff a few more examples here, but I realize that that's the real answer to your question, is that that's coming, and I'm really excited to do that. I'm a 4-line in human design, so being in that flow of not just me talking, but you guys getting to hear from the people that I'm connected to feels important. And I know, I literally had no reason to believe that this would work for me other than just continuing to put one foot in front of the other. And by the way, this is not about just the coaching industry or just the healing industry. It is, that's just one expression of this. This is deeper than that. This is about, you came here with gifts that were innate, but also were catalyzed and developed through challenging experiences that you now have roadmaps for. And what is the form that those gifts are meant to take? Right? A lot of it does take a form of online business, healing, coaching, things like that, but it isn't always that. And I work with people across the spectrum, including artists and creatives. Awesome. So yeah, one other example, and then we'll begin to wrap it up. So if there's any final questions, drop them. Is I have a client she's an amazing client and friend who went through a period of time where she was developing her gifts. Let's just broadly say that she has healing gifts, to protect anonymity here until I go get her permission to tell this actual story. Healing gifts in multiple modalities that are integrating. She did have private clients. She was facilitating classes and experiences for people, and she also was one of the main practitioners of someone else's modality, right? So she was like a known name, is like in this thing that's very popular and very well known. She is one of the main people who is helping facilitate that, right? And that was really expansive for her for a period of time. But at a certain point, and this is when we started working together, she realized, I have to leave. And she had to face all of these fears of, I'm actually only legitimate or known because I'm under the umbrella of this other person's thing that they made really big. And what we had to unpack was, no, she helped make that thing really big. Her magic is unique. And what is the maturation of those gifts that she's being called into now? It is to create something that is the specific, unique blend of what she is here to transmit, and to create a really beautiful expression of that. That's looking like a membership now, and the work that we did individually, but we also, I do this in God is My Boss and in other places, other programs, is the self-worth work. Because again, it was already there. She knows what she teaches. She has people who love what she does, and it's very legitimately, obviously important for the world. And she had to face those fears of, no one's going to care about it. I'm not legitimate if I'm not under these other umbrellas. And what was actually financially capping her, because there was this like tightness experience happening, was all of the unconscious behavior that she didn't even realize that she was doing, that was essentially communicating to the universe that she wasn't worth it, right? She was there's a place for giving discounts and scholarships, but when you do it from low self-worth, that is going to affect the bottom line in a negative way. You could do it from generosity, but if you do it from, who am I really to do this and to charge this, and I don't deserve this, then that is going to, communicate, essentially, it's going to broadcast, hey, this person's rate is actually just this. right? It's not what they say it is. It's actually what their behavior is saying it is. So we had to, and it wasn't just this one place that she was working. We actually found all these other places. Oh, she's still kind of under this umbrella. She teaches here every once in a while. This mentor has an influence over her. And it was time for her to go through that graduation where she got ready for that moment. Was it always bad that she worked for other people? No, just like it wasn't bad or misaligned, let's say, for me to have all these other jobs where I was teaching or running workshops within other organizations. But at a certain point, you're hitting that glass ceiling and you're either going to stagnate and start to, the whole reality is going to start to kind of crumble around you, or you're going to step forward and really create, as the I Ching says, an enduring form of, or for the gifts of the Spirit. So what you have been given, creating an enduring form for it. And there is a divine timing to it. I'm not someone who says like, you need to immediately quit your job. No, you need to immediately start taking action on sharing your gifts. You need to immediately start to see yourself as someone who has something worthwhile to share, and to start to expand your perception of what that could look like, and to start to critique the stories that say, oh, I couldn't do that because who would pay for it, and I'm not the kind of person who go blah, 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 blah. Start to critique those stories, start the process, and then the graduation becomes inevitable. Right? You don't have to rug pull yourself by cutting off the other income sources, and actually you'll be less likely to get rug pulled by the universe, by God, in the sense that your, gifts, or you get to this point where you've been stagnated. That is when you'll get rug pulled. When it's like, okay, they're not going to keep moving forward and sharing their gifts and creating a form for it unless we cut these other options. That's what happened to me, right? I was working for someone else and I had to leave basically right away because it was revealed to me that there were very unethical things happening, right? So I got that boot. If that boot is part of your path, it will be. It doesn't have to be. And you can preempt it by saying, okay, I'm going to start to relate to my day job or the way that I'm working for other people as essentially my funding to get this next thing off the ground. And I'm going to go all in already energetically and behaviorally on the new thing, rather than kind of just putting one toe in. Good questions. I feel like there's one other thing that was coming through there. Yeah. And I do see when people when they get scared of sharing their gifts, they do, and they try to like laterally move to do something safer, right? Sometimes there's a time where you just got to catch your breath and then you get ready to keep going. But often you will see stagnation there until they get back on the path of, okay, this is what I'm really here to share, which of course requires facing all those fears. Years ago, I co-created an experience and I'm interested in doing it on my own. I totally resonate with this example. Yeah, and some of us are really here to collaborate. You can look at your vocation and culture lines and the gene keys, which is something my beloved Christina teaches very powerfully on, and see what type of system you're meant to be operating in, how many people you're meant to be working with. This isn't about a sort of cult of the individual, everybody's got to do their own thing. It's just about, if you have unique gifts, you have to take 100% responsibility for giving them the form that they're meant to take. When you do that, it could turn out that you're meant to have a business partner. It could turn out that you actually get hired into the perfect organization to do that, but that's only going to be possible if you fully embrace the calling that you have and you clear out all the fears of going all in on that. And usually what I see is that eventually people reach a point where they have no reason to go back or to find safety under someone's umbrella from a place of fear because they're so successful. Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a breath here and feel into if there's any final things that are meant to come through right now. Yeah, we'll keep sharing more examples, and you'll see me put in my stories the heads up about different people that I'm going to go live with to talk about their businesses. And a lot of them are people who've gone through evolutions of business as well. And that's part of it too, is that it's an iteration. But you can't iterate if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for it to be perfect, waiting for it to be guaranteed. You got to get in the game, and then through actually connecting with the people that you're here to serve and co-create with, then more clarity is revealed. Okay, we'll close with this final question here, which is somewhat unrelated, but is connected to what comes up when you become a public figure in some way, or you put yourself out there. How are you navigating the social pressure to speak on world issues? I do think it's important and vital, but I don't agree being forced to do so. Yeah, this is another big thing that for some people, you may know, like, oh, I'm supposed to put this out there. I'm supposed to create this. I'm supposed to record these meditations. I'm supposed to make this art. I'm supposed to offer this. I have a friend who's creating a resource now for divorced dads, right, from a very niche specific experience that he's gone through. I have a client who does very niche specific approach to astrology that other people aren't doing. I have a client who's making the transition between being a therapist and being boxed in to being essentially a counselor, a guide, a coach, in a way where she gets to determine exactly how she works with people, and she's not in that old construct, right? When people feel into what you're called to do next, and there's a block that shows up of I'm scared, or I don't know what I would do, or I don't know if I can move forward, part of that is not necessarily about you're unclear about your gifts. It's about the fear of everything else that is involved in it. And this can be one of them, this feeling of, okay, once I'm out there, then I'm going to have to navigate all these different things. First of all, it's a blessing to get to navigate new problems or new questions. Just like when you buy a house, you have different problems than when you were renting, right? You have more kids, you have different things that you're navigating than when you didn't have kids. So each new level, new challenges that are for your growth. What I would say is that it's a very unique, specific perspective that everybody has to figure out for themselves. Some of my work used to be more related before I came online and started to share my message in this way. I used to do work related to cultural cohesion, somewhat related to diversity and inclusion. Essentially, how do we navigate this really wild world with all of these different experiences and find coherence and cohesion in our workplaces? That was an aspect of what I did. And so I did have, for a period of time, I had a lot of clients who were coming to me and saying, I feel all this pressure. People are calling me out. They're telling me to talk about this, talk about that. And a lot of the work that I would do with them was just about creating their own code of ethics and values and saying, what is the ethical and value-based function of this platform? What is your code of honor? And beyond what the world says is right, what's your code of honor? How do we operationalize those values so that it's not a thing of should I talk about this or should I talk about that? It's I'm very clear on what the highest expression of my values are, and I review them on a regular basis, maybe every couple of months. And I'm clear that I am living my values by acting in this way. And there is a big energy on the planet right now where people are working out power. People are working out who has power over other people. And when you feel like you don't have a lot of power, it's very easy to look at people who seem like they have more power than you, right? Who seem like they have more influence than you and say, you need to do it this way. But once you're in the seat where you have more of a platform, you're able to make that choice for yourself. I'm going to take a hydration moment. And so where I would kind of flip it is really seeing with compassion all the people who are saying you need to talk about this, you need to talk about that, and say that's what matters to them. Here's what I'm really clear on. And what I see is that as people get deeper and more mature in the creation of their offers and their platform and their message, they have a more grounded, holistic understanding of also, this is a big thing. We're really getting somewhere because all of a sudden my throat is catching. People have a more holistic perspective on what creates change. This is another assignment I give my clients is, what is your theory of change? Okay, you're rightfully distressed about this system of oppression in the world. Aren't we all? What is your deep understanding, as received through intuitive guidance in your own brain, about what is going to create change within this situation? When you get to that, then you're able to say, okay, people may think I'm a bad person because I'm not acting like a 24/7 news service and putting stuff out there saying, oh my God, this terrible thing's happening. But my theory of change involves understanding energetics, and maybe there's plenty of people who you would see who are getting called out for not talking about things, who are doing so much behind the scenes, and that's the choice that they've made, right? So whenever I see this kind of uproar of this person needs to talk about this, I see people who don't feel like they have a voice, and who, the invitation is really, what, for all of us, if you had a platform, what would you be sharing about? What is truly like heart on fire, your calling, and go do that. Go start showing up as if you have the 1 million followers that someone else has that you think should be acting in a different way. I'm going to take another hydration moment. Beautiful. Yeah, felt drawn to this live. You want to share your gifts with the world and also work in the cultural space within corporate. Yeah, that's a lot of what I used to do. And it's just gradually over time, it evolved into what I do now. But it is, navigating team culture, navigating how to know what to share online when everyone has an opinion about what you should share online. That's a big aspect of what I work with people on. And so I would say, there's a lot more I could speak on related to the subject of current events and public figures. But the most actionable thing I can say is make your own theory of change. Say, the bots approve. Make your own theory of change. Really define for yourself, what do I think is going to make the biggest difference here? How do I be in action on that on a consistent basis? Define your values, define how you want people to feel, what the real function of your platform is, and then allow that to inform the choices that you're making. And you also, it's your house, right? So you can set a cultural standard where you say, I'm actually not available for people to tell me how to use my platform, but when I feel called to, I will share what I'm doing on, X, Y, and Z. And it is a way people get derailed from their calling, is they start to feel like they have to answer to everybody rather than answering to themselves and to God and doing the specific thing that they are here to do. And it requires a certain level of discipline because there's a lot going on. And for those of us with big hearts, we want to help everybody, right? We want to be involved in everything when it shows up in our face. But the discipline to say, what is my assignment? What is the role that I will play? And I will play it so fully. I will do it. I will go all the way. And I will continue to say, hey, God, life, creation, creator, show me. If I'm supposed to do something different, if I am supposed to speak out about this, if I'm not supposed to speak out about it, please show me. And this is where we get into just baseline spiritual practice every day, asking for divine guidance every day, tuning in and saying, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? Right? And not being in this overly mental construct of I do this or I do that. It being, okay, what is my assignment today? And surrendering our mental constructs, right? So I have certain standards and ways that I approach things, but if I tuned in and there was something going on and that morning I heard the divine call, you need to share about it in a way that you're not used to doing, I would do it. Right? But we got to leave space for that. We got to hone that capacity to listen. I will be posting this. It'll go right up on my Instagram, and we're also going to do our best to download it and put it up on YouTube as well, because it's a lot easier to listen back there. All right, folks, this was a delightful call. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're doing this every Tuesday in September. Next Tuesday, I'm going to have a very special guest who's someone who has an amazing business based on their gifts, and we're going to be talking about that path, and you're going to get to hear from someone else who's also walking this path. If you want to come to the masterclass, I legitimately have not been so excited about a masterclass or a free offering like this in a long time. The conversation just feels so right for this moment, and I feel more refined in my ability to teach on it than ever before, and I've been teaching on it for years. So I would love to see you there. It's Monday, September 22nd. If you comment masterclass anywhere, you go to the link in my bio, you can sign up. And that's a wrap, y'all. Sending you lots of love. Have a beautiful rest of your day.